Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Sonia Siddiqui, and joining us today is Micah from BDO Canada. Micah, hi.
Hi, everyone.
It's nice to have you on here. She will be going over top 10 tips effective branding for the Canadian job market. It's a very suitable topic for everyone watching today. Before I hand it over to her, I'm just going to go over some tips on how to best watch the webinar today. Please know that you are all on listen only mode, so we will not be able to hear you, but we will certainly take your questions towards the end of the presentation. You will be able to type your questions into the Q&A tab found at the bottom of your screen. For best results, please use a laptop or a desktop computer using Google Chrome as your browser. And if you are using mobile devices such as cell phones or tablets, I recommend downloading the Zoom app. And all of our webinars are always recorded, so you will be able to access this recording sometime tomorrow. You'll get a recording link in your email. This webinar is on demand. You can always use the click here to join link in a few hours after the webinar, and you'll be able to rewatch the webinar again. Feel free to watch it and share it with your network as well. Just to tell you a little bit about ACCES, we've been around for over 30 years, helping job seekers such as yourselves. In the past year alone, we were able to serve over 34,000 job seekers. We work with over 2,200 employer connections, sponsors, different associations and organizations that help our clients with their job search. We've got over 30 tailored programs, which include our sector-specific bridging programs, pre-arrival programs, programs for women, for youth. So check out our website to see what programs would be best suited for you. We do have 7 locations in the GTA. However, all of our programs are being held virtually. So take advantage of the no commute and being able to attend our programs from the comfort of your own home. I'm going to hand it over to Micah now.
Thanks, Sonia. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here and sort of present on the top 10 tips, I guess, on effective branding for the Canadian job market. Sonia, could you please go to the next slide? Just a short introduction about myself. So I actually came to Canada in 2007. I've been here, I guess now for almost 14 years, so time flies. I did go to university here, but and then started working at a marketing agency for a number of years, then moved over to sort of the B2B side of things, so on the client side in marketing, and then worked there in branding and communications. And then currently I'm more of a sales enablement type role, so some call it like business development. I basically assist some of our senior people at the firm on how to sell our products and services. So in total, I have about 10 years of experience. Just wanted to sort of set that foundation here. Next slide. So, I did write 10 tips and there are 10 steps, but I think this is one of the most important steps. So what is, building your foundation? Oftentimes, I talk to a lot of my peers and friends and colleagues and like help them find a job, especially in Canada. I have a lot of friends who have moved to Canada over the past like 10, 15 years. And the first thing I say is, what are your current skills in education? If you have foreign credentials, it can sometimes be hard to get them translated here, right? So assess that state, know where you fall. And then, look at the Canadian job market. And sorry, I know like some of you are probably already here, some of you are abroad, like, so it's in varying degrees of where you are. So some of this you might just know, but just to cover all of the bases, how does the Canadian job market look for you? Given your current skills and education and experience, what areas or industries are you interested in? And then you sort of have that type of gap analysis where you look at, well, I have this degree, but to be in an example of an accounting, if I have foreign credentials in accounting, do I need to become a CPA in say the province of Ontario? And then what is required for that? What kinds of firms are hiring for those jobs? I also often would suggest to look at, what is your what types of jobs are out there and which types of jobs are being advertised, because you want to know sort of where you fall, but also what is sort of on trend, and what the employers are interested in. Okay, next slide. So then it sort of moves on. Once you know where you land, so I'm just going to stick to, say, the accounting example, because it's fairly easy. Accounting profession is highly, highly in demand in Canada, right? Starting from all the way from bookkeeping to, chartered professional accountants in the country. So once you know where you are and where you stand, this is when you work on developing what I would call a unique value proposition. And I often use an example here of, imagine you're selling a product. So if we're selling like toothpaste, just a very simple example, how would you position that product to your prospective buyer? And then what is the value it brings to your buyer, right? It's the same for us, right? In a personal brand type of example, the most important thing is your value proposition. Yes, you might have some accounting experience, but you want to sort of come up with that short elevator pitch. So what is an elevator pitch? If you are in an elevator with someone, you probably have a minute or two to introduce yourself. What can you say in those 1 or 2 minutes to someone so that they can just know right away that Mika is a sales and marketing professional with over 10 years of experience. I bring ABC skills to this job, and these are my aspirations. Like, it's very short, very concise, and very crisp. I think this is really important, and it sounds sort of like kind of, oh, it's only 1 minute or two, but it comes from a lot of like thinking and assessing who you want to be, how do you want to look to others, and then it sort of carries through all of the aspects of your personal brand. So as you'll see in the slides going forward, like, we'll keep coming back to this unique value proposition. And I think, in my own career about 10 years ago, not 10 years ago, 7 years ago. So I was at a marketing agency, and I was trying to move to sort of a B2B, which is a business to business type of marketing on the client side, more into the corporate world. I had some chats with people, and this one pretty senior guy at a bank asked me, so what's your elevator pitch? Why you? 30 seconds. And he literally timed me, and I was lost. Like, I started talking about this and that, and I know, branding, and I know sales, and it's just like all over the place. And he said, my piece of advice to you, like, really come down to 30 seconds, because people don't have time. They lose interest quickly. And you got to be really crisp, and it sort of gives you this foundational knowledge about yourself and how you want to position it. And from that, you sort of can build out your brand strategy, and then promote your brand. Oh, okay. Thank you, Sonia. Next slide. Okay, so you have your value proposition, right? So using a Mika example, I am a marketing and sales professional with 10 years of experience, and my unique value proposition is I bring both sides of the angle, right? So usually marketing professionals are just marketing professionals, or sales just do, they just sell. I kind of have both, and that's the strength that I play up in different interviews, and as well as when I brand myself. So these are some of the key things that I would do to help promote my value proposition / brand to all of the other people. So there is all of the web stuff, LinkedIn profile, and how do you, Google yourself, like how do you appear there, and then resume, different networking events, coffee meetings or virtual meetings, recruiters, etc. I will go through each one of these in a little bit of more detail on the slides to follow. But as you can see, value proposition is always at the center. Next slide. Okay, so LinkedIn, obviously a lot has been written about LinkedIn, and oh my gosh, you should have this great profile, and make sure it's completed. But it is actually a good advice, and I think in my experience working in Canada, like, it is the #1 tool you can have to get a job, to be noticed by employers, and to get recruiters to reach out to you. There's an option there that you probably may or may not know, but yes, I'm available for recruitment or job search. So you click that off. That's in the free version as well. I know that LinkedIn Premium is another option where I think you pay like $30 a month or so, but first month is free. And that allows you to get more access to some of the LinkedIn data and like maybe target it, like reach out to employers in a more targeted way. What are some of the best practices? Just really short, because I know there's like lots of information online. Obviously, have a professional headshot. Depends on your job, but most of the times it's probably not a picture you have on Facebook or Instagram or a dating site. So something professional, you look nice and you're smiling and um, anyway, so then 100% completion is LinkedIn is actually very great because it shows you if your profile is fully optimized by saying, oh, you need to fill out this section and this section. As much as you can, please fill it out. The next item I put on here is executive summary. I honestly think that is the most important thing on your LinkedIn profile. And that is, to me, my value proposition. How do I want to be shown to a recruiter who has 1 minute to read my LinkedIn profile, or 30 seconds to a prospective in-house recruiter and employer, right? How do I want to be seen? What if someone looks me up who met me at a networking event? Like how do I want to be seen? And this is where your value proposition really shines. And it doesn't have to be one sentence, but you can write a nice paragraph that sort of tells your story. And we'll get to that telling your story piece sort of closer to the end, but it all sort of paints one picture of you as this professional with your unique value proposition, and it sort of shows up in every channel that someone might see you or look you up at. Brief summary of your resume. Of course, LinkedIn has different sections, and I don't think we need to put that much detail on it as you would put on your resume. But just some key action takeaways, just like I was at this job from here to here. And then if you're sort of have some foreign credentials, it would be really great to see like how do some of those skills transfer, right? Or what type of, like, if you use sort of the, I guess not to say the Canadian way of saying things, but it's seeing how your job here or your profession here, what verbs they utilize, and then having those keywords on your LinkedIn profile would really, really help. Testimonials are huge. A lot of people don't do it, myself included. I talk about it all the time, but it is just such a great way to get, a testimonial from your professional colleague. So it's a peer or your boss or someone who used to report into you. Ideally, all of those. And if you work with clients, it could also be your clients. That's the strongest type of I guess confirmation of who you are as a professional. Typically, testimonials are written by you ideally. So what I usually would do is reach out to someone and say, look, I know we've worked together for 5 years, would you be okay to write a short testimonial for me? And then they'll say, once they agree, what I say is, I'd like to offer up sort of maybe a couple of different versions of a testimonial. Feel free to edit as you see fit. But that's just sort of, I'm helping them out to highlight what I want to see highlighted on my profile. And people usually really appreciate it because no one knows what to write, and they have time constraints, they're busy, and so it's really to help them out, but really help yourself. And this is where, again, you are supporting your value proposition, right? Because you want to have, say, if you're having 5 testimonials, each one supported from a different angle. Each one just tells a little bit more to support the fact that, hey, Mika is a sales and marketing professional. So an example is, my colleague from a marketing agency would write a good testimonial for me. A client of mine from a market, when I was at the agency, would write a little testimonial. And then maybe someone I worked with on the sales side. So then that sort of complements my own story. And then also I would be, very cognizant of what you're liking on LinkedIn, if you're posting things, and who you're following, because people do look at that. That all shows up in people's feeds. So if you want to build that one story about yourself, make sure it aligns. All of everything you do aligns to that one thing. Next slide. Okay, resume or CV. So usually, I would suggest, and again, this is not a like, I know there's some correlations with, you know, how do we find a job? But here it's from a branding perspective, right? If my value proposition is Mika is in sales and marketing, my resume actually has I have several versions of my resume. There's a general version which has everything I've ever done. And this is something that I wouldn't share with my prospective employers, but I would literally write down all of my achievements. You know, maybe I got some awards at work, every different type of experience since literally like graduating from school. This is something for me to remember. Once you have the general version, and if you maintain it all the time, especially when you're working somewhere like for 5 years, you really forget what sort of achievements you've had. So it's really good to maintain that general version. From there, you know, you tailor each resume to a job posting. And, you know, with the sort of proliferation of a lot of the HR automation software, I've heard like so many stories of people I know here who are so qualified for a job, but they just cannot get a call from you know, that first informational call from HR. And this is because the automation software is probably not picking up the keywords that match to their job posting. I mean, yes, it is a bit silly, but I think the volume of resumes that HR people get, you know, it's also hard on them. So sometimes they may use this type of software to weed out some of the resumes. And so keywords are really key. And by that, I mean like literally go through the job posting and make sure some of the key action verbs are show up, verbs or other words show up in your resume. So if they're asking for, you know, excellent communication skills, am I going to copy the whole thing? Probably not, but I would say um, great communication skills, but make sure that communication skills shows up, and you really want to match that throughout your resume and highlight it in the different job positions you've held. When I do send the resume, I would recommend it's probably 1 page long. And again, it does tie into your value proposition, because once you submit that resume and you get to an interview, that's when you can tell a bigger story. But the resume shouldn't be so different from everything you've done and what you're portraying on, say, LinkedIn. Other social media and web, Google yourself. I think that's really important, because a lot of us have a lot of presence right now. And then, you know, Instagram, Facebook, and all of these other social media channels, it's fun. We use it for personal use. And even if the accounts are locked, for example, I know a lot of, say, large tech companies, they pay someone to go and not hack into your account, but like access your accounts and really look up your private accounts, because they're doing what's called a social media scan. They're just seeing what kind of an individual you are. And that may come in at, say, later stages of an interview. So you just want to make sure, you know, you're professional across all of your channels, even the private ones. Next page. Okay, so you have your LinkedIn, you've got your resume, and then, you know, the next part would be networking. Networking, I know, sort of elicits a lot of dread from most people I talk to here. And, you know, it is really hard, but it does get better with practice, I really, really think. So there are different types of networking things that you could do, right? And I know right now we're in a pandemic, so there's not a lot of in-person stuff, but there's a ton of like virtual events happening. This is your opportunity to go and practice your personal story. It's like, and you know, and tell people about your value proposition and like really test it out and see how people react. The more you say it to someone, the better you would become, right? So this is also part of like the whole foundation piece. You know, if you know what industry you want to be in, and now you know, look up what are there any industry associations. And I know that applies to some professions versus others, but like you know, if you say work in a construction company, right? It's industry associations, or there's specific events, say, run by like the Canadian Construction Association. Like maybe you want to attend those webinars, just see what's happening in the field. There are various job career fairs. And for example, like a close friend of mine moved to Canada 4 or 5 years ago. And, you know, she was an HR professional, couldn't find a job for a while because there's just so many HR people here. And she kept getting told, oh, you don't have Canadian experience, you don't have Canadian experience. She was an HR manager at a multinational company before. So coming here and being told that your 15 years of experience do not count at all because you quote unquote don't have Canadian experience, I mean, it really sucked. So one of the things she did was she found this career fair, and probably like through things like Access Employment as well and other organizations. She got connected to others who have also just arrived, and that expanded her network. And she had people in similar positions looking for a job together. It made it easier. She also attended other networking events. She looked into an HR designation. Like, there's all these steps that she was doing that ultimately landed her a job. um, how to prepare? I mean, networking is a lot of small talk, and I know it can be really dreadful, but I usually follow the great example of, again, this is your chance to talk about your value proposition. This is your short intro. Hi, I'm Mika. I work in sales and marketing, and my interests are this and this is the reason why I'm at this specific job fair. How about you? And then you just talk about that, and this is a quick connection. You also want to probably make sure you hit as many people as you can at a networking event, rather than just being stuck with one person. Next slide. Okay, informational interviews, I think, in my personal opinion, are the most underrated tools out there. A lot of, not a lot, some people I know don't use them because, it doesn't get you the job. But this is just part of your long-term strategy that is aligned to your own personal brand, because what you are doing is you're finding out more about the profession you want to be in, or the specific job you want to land, or maybe it's a company or industry. So LinkedIn is a really, really great resource for this, where you can literally Google anyone and see what types of people fill these jobs, and then maybe reach out to some of them. I typically, even before the pandemic, I probably wouldn't ask them for an in-person meeting, just because unless you're like coming to their office building and it's convenient for them, otherwise I don't think people want to go out of their way and meet up with you, because it's just, life is busy, nothing personal, right? So you want to make it as convenient for them. You reach out with a quick note, again, a couple sentences about yourself that includes your value proposition, and then you just say, I really love to learn more about your role, and there's some questions like I've had, right? And then you tell them in the invite, I think you have to tell them, it will only take 20, 25 minutes of your time, just a quick phone call. That sets expectations that they don't have to invest more time than that could be possible. So some people will say, oh no, God, like I don't want to talk to you for for an hour. I just don't have the time. 20 minutes on the phone call though, just to talk about themselves, that's probably a possibility. Again, out of 100 invites, sure, you can get maybe 10, 20% responses, but that's something. And I had a friend I have a friend who works in insurance. She's also an immigrant to Canada. She has a really good job right now, and she actually landed it by, I think she's done about 40 informational interviews, which, if you're in Toronto and you work in insurance, I mean, you're meeting a lot of people that way, because she didn't have any success at networking events. She was introverted. She felt overwhelmed with like 200-300 people just trying to find a job. So she went the informational interview route. She found people who are her peers or just a level above. If they're really, really senior, it's hard to get their attention, but your peer or level above is just a great place to start to see, to ask. So your peers, you ask them, what skills do you have? How do you enjoy this job? What about the specific subsector you're in, right? In the insurance case, it's all so different. So she was trying to understand all different types of insurance. A level above, what she did was this is because a level above you is someone who is making hiring decisions. So she also talked to those people, because she said, what is important for me to have to get hired for a job that you would potentially be hiring for on your team? And she got tons of information, but no job offers. So this is not a job offer thing. You're not asking for a job, and you do not bring up the fact that you're looking for a job. But such a great way to establish a connection, add them on LinkedIn after, maintain, some sort of maybe like once every couple months, you just check in with them on LinkedIn. Eventually, that may turn into a fruitful conversation about a job possibility, but it's just about expanding your network. They will know your story. They've already kind of talked to you. So there's just different avenues open up for mentorship, general network, or a specific job opportunity. So in her case, she actually, though she talked to about 40 people, she then she kept applying for jobs, right? And she found one job where she just met that person from that subsector in the insurance industry. And because she learned about certain things that are like trends and triggers and pain points for that specific subsector, she incorporated it into her resume and in the interviews. And the person hiring said, "Oh my God, you're very knowledgeable and you're extremely interested in this, in the specific area of insurance." And that's how she got hired. And she's been there for like 4 years. So um, next slide, please. Thank you. Recruitment. Recruitment is another way to expand your network and, sort of practice again your value proposition. Make sure, your personal brand is spread out. So I underlined additional step because we can't rely on recruiters to find us a job unless you're in a very high demand specific profession. So for example, I know someone who does construction of high rise like apartment buildings. That's a very specific, limited skill around the world. Those people get recruited and come from other countries and get a job right away, right? Most of us are not in that situation, myself included. There's tons of marketers around the world and like literally a lot in Canada. So having said that, I think recruiters are a great way to add in as an additional step. And, talking to them, I found that it helps me talk through my value proposition once again, tell them my story, obviously send my resume, and it's free, so I have nothing to lose. There are specific specialized recruiters by industry, which I have also found out just through my own job search experience. So, construction, IT, accounting professionals or finance in general. There is even marketing recruiters. They only hire for marketing agencies. So, and then there's a little difference between in-house recruiters, so people who work at a company versus people who are actually part of the recruitment agencies. I also put down temp jobs because temp jobs, I have another friend, again, immigrant, who was not educated here, but was looking to get into actually a marketing field. She couldn't. It was really hard. It's there's already so many marketing professionals. How do you stand out? She actually went the temp job route. So she needed a job. She had to pay bills, right? Temp job is she got through a recruitment agency, got in as an admin assistant at a big company, and was there for 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, she made an impression on the team there, and they said, "Why don't you stay as part of our permanent admin staff?" From there on, a year in, she worked her way into getting to know some of the marketing people on the team, showing them what an asset she is, and then eventually moved into a marketing role. So I think that's maybe, yes, it is a longer path, but if you got to try all of the avenues, and sometimes you just need a temp job. So yeah, next slide. Okay, so all of these activities where you are basically talking about your brand, promoting your value proposition, practicing, and it's all great. And now you land a job interview. Um, Along with building a foundation, having a unique value proposition, I think telling your story is probably the number one thing that has helped me and many others I know get the job that they are really, really want. So, what is telling your story? I'm sure you may have heard, how companies need to tell a story. Apple tells a story with their new product rollouts, and there's a very specific way they do things. Everyone knows Apple, and this is because they have a strong story. It also applies to individuals like us. So story is a great opportunity to expand on your value proposition by setting the context of where you're coming from. So, you know, once you have a job interview, you look at your value proposition, which is always your foundational piece. And then you look at, who is my audience? And then from there, imagine it's like you need to connect it through a bridge. How do you cross that bridge? How do you tailor your story and interweave your key value proposition points to show that person why you are a great fit for this job? Um, I would suggest, having in your head, like it's like maybe writing an essay. What are the 2, 3, 4 key pillars or points about you of what you are and how the how the employer will benefit from that. That also ties into the ultimate takeaway. So imagine you're in a job interview and, I go in and, sorry, I go in and, again, Mika is a marketing and sales professional. I have both sides. That is my value proposition. That's my strength. I have both. But when I'm telling my story, it depends on what the job is for. If it's a marketing job, what am I doing? I'm going to tell a story of, look, all my life I've wanted to do marketing. And again, this is going to sound a little salesy, but you're just, you know, highlighting certain parts of your biography to tell a really good story of why you ultimately need this job. And so the way you think about it is past, present, and near future. Near future is you having this job. What happened in your past that has led you to obtain all of those skills and experience and education? How are you different from others? And then that ultimately is like, this is why I'm good for this job. There's often an emotional connection you can attach, not too much, not too like, teary and I don't know, not go into like 20 years of your life before having this experience or starting from childhood. But typically, the way I tell my story is I say, is it okay if I just briefly talk about myself? And, I say, I was born outside of Canada. I moved here in 2007. Very short. I don't talk about my long journey and the hardships or anything like that, but just to set that sort of lens through which they view you. And coming from outside has a big plus, I think, in job interviews because I mean, you've immigrated here, you've changed countries, languages, culture, like that just shows resilience, perseverance, like lots of great skills that employers would want. So yeah, and then I just showed them like a short, like I moved to Canada in 2007, I went to school here and then I've worked in some of these jobs. And now let me, we can get to the interview. And often interviewers will ask, tell me a little bit about yourself. Very important, connects to your executive summary on LinkedIn, connects to your key qualifications paragraph in your resume. It connects to all of your other social media and ultimately your value proposition. So that is a great way to establish that context. And then throughout the interview questions, if you have your 3 or 4 main pillars, what are the 3 main things you want your interviewer to take away? And ideally, they are connected to your own personal story and ultimately to your value proposition, right? So you just hone in on the same points. If there's a difficult question that comes your way, you say, just give me a second to think about it, and then you go back to your pillars. That thing, like that, those pillars, the pillars approach has worked amazingly for so many people I know, including myself. I once interviewed for a job where, frankly, it was a little bit probably out of my league. As I sat there and, the interviewer asked a really difficult question, I said, let me just think about it. And then I thought to myself, I know what my 3 pillars are. I know what my foundation is. How do I answer from that angle? How do I answer so that this person gets to, hear one of my 3 takeaways that they need to know? And it just comes to you. It really does. So basically, you can answer any question if you have that story in your head, because nothing can sway you from it. And it organizes your thoughts and aligns it all into one picture. So when the employer goes looking around at different things and your resume and, oh, let me check what her LinkedIn says and what does she say in the interview, it all connects into one story. And the last thing is like be authentic and true to yourself. I know there's so much, said about this, but it really is true, because as much as culture fit can be very subjective, but it's not just the employer choosing you, you're also choosing them. And I know sometimes, of course, we need a job, and it's not about, oh, I'm gonna, say no. But just if you're really true to yourself, and it does come through in a very sincere way during interviews. And if your story is, true with some of the highlights, and I'm not going to say spin, but certain specific highlights, tying it into the specific job and how the employer will benefit from hiring you, it all connect into a really good impression of you. So next slide. Okay, and just to conclude, keep on building, right? So I know that, I've personally struggled sometimes with finding a job, and, especially after university, like if you can't pay your bills, like it's really hard. And I'm not saying that everyone will have that experience. Some of us will, some of us won't. But, it's also like, as an immigrant, like I think, I see a lot of myself, but also I see other like close friends and some of the other peers that I know, right, who came here. It can be really, really hard. And I think, it's not just because, quote unquote, you're a newcomer to Canada, or it's not just because, oh, you don't have Canadian experience. Okay, well, that's one of the hurdles. But, the job market is so complex. There's an overflow of resumes. HR departments are overwhelmed. I have a friend who was born in Canada, and he sent in 1 year like 400 resumes, 400, and got 3 interviews out of the 400, and not a job, like did not get a job. He then went the route of like recruitment and kept looking, and it took him 2 years to find the job that he wants. So it's not, yes, coming from a different country is an extra challenge, but it doesn't define you necessarily, right? It's how you present yourself. What types of things do you do? Um, Another thing is, and then I have another friend who came to Canada 2 years ago, and she landed a job 1 month in, a really well-paying job. And, she's an architect. Like that just, it's just the way it is. It depends what profession you're in, how in demand is it. And then, but, all you can do is optimize, sort of write down your value proposition, have your resume, coordinated and organized, have your LinkedIn optimized. So you're doing everything you can. And it all connects into one story that you ultimately deliver on your job interview that will hopefully land you a job. So, and then just as a last sort of parting thought, I guess, on this, I've worked in the corporate world now for like 7-8 years, and I think in the last, I'm just gonna say a couple years, I've noticed really like a big shift around diversity and inclusion. It's being driven by the government of Canada, and it's being also driven by global social, right, events that we know of, including those in the United States. But it has really forced a lot of big organizations in Canada to think about diversity and how they're hiring and who they're hiring, which I think makes it all the better for all of us who, who weren't born in Canada, who are not from here. And we can use that angle as well as an additional advantage to our professional skills and experience. So I think, compared to like 10-15 years ago, it's definitely a bit of a better world for us. So kind of wanted to end it on that good note. All right. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you so much for such an informative webinar. We do have a few questions waiting already, so I'll start reading them out loud. Can an executive summary and elevator pitch be pretty much the same thing?
Executive summary, I guess, in the context of LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
It can. I guess elevator, yes. So it will have elements of both. Your executive summary on LinkedIn can be a paragraph or two. But when you practice it out loud, by elevator pitch, I really mean like say it out loud to someone and time yourself. And then ask those people, did they get the right takeaways? So it might be a shorter version of your executive summary, probably. But yes, those two are connected and have to be connected.
Thank you. And you had a good point about getting as many contacts as possible. But like, does that mean like, should you be filtering through to make sure that they're also quality contacts and you're not just adding anyone just to build your network? Like, should you be like filtering
Yep.
through contacts as well?
So, I mean, I think it depends on your own personality too, right? If you're the type of person who just like came here and wants to know more people, you sometimes you don't know where those contacts will come in handy, and it sounds like you're going to use those people, but that's not the context I mean. Sometimes you may become friends with them, or they might be a good reference for you in the future. But really, I think if you're looking for a job and you're building your brand, you probably want to have a little bit of a filter on who you're trying to meet, and then make sure those contacts are prioritized. And the rest, I mean, it's really up to you if you want to have lots of other friends and from all different walks of life. I hope that answers that.
Thank you. The next question is kind of around international experience and having sort of like a generalist role. Whereas,
Right.
when you look at Canadian jobs, most of them want you to be a specialist. How should you go about applying for jobs like that?
So, right, as a generalist, and I guess it depends the specific field you're in, but
Mhm.
again, I think it's once you establish yourself as a generalist, write out what are you good, like what are the key buckets of things that are actual skills related to your generalist experience, right? What are the key buckets? Write them out. And then when you apply to specific job, maybe you downplay some of the other buckets, but you play up those, that one specific area of specialization that goes first into a paragraph. That goes on your executive summary if you're trying to hone in on a specific area of your profession. So I think in the insurance example, right? Insurance can be quite general as well. But as you look for different jobs and you apply, I would literally have a general resume and then just highlight and provide those specific specialist examples first, make sure all of the keywords match, um, and then apply like that. And then also talk to some of the people, because are there any other ways where you can apply it? But it's like you slice and dice your experience and then tailor it to a specific job posting. I know on LinkedIn it's a bit harder to do, because if you're a generalist and you're pretty much okay with any specialist job, you don't want to probably tailor yourself to one thing online where everyone can see your profile. But you just say then, I'm good in general areas of ABC, and have deep experience in those top 3 or 4 areas. And then that hopefully opens, use the keywords that they use for those specialist jobs, right, to identify your quote unquote specialties under the general experience that you have. I hope that helps. It's a bit, I think it depends on the industry too.
Yeah, I totally agree. It does depend
Right.
on the industry as well. The
Mhm.
next question I have here is, what should you do about LinkedIn contacts that you have from your country of origin? Like, should you start reducing them and start adding people in Canada more?
I don't think you need to reduce them. I mean, it doesn't matter if you want to get to 500 plus contacts anyway. And why not keep in touch with people from back home? Because sometimes, I mean, I truly believe in the power of connection. Sometimes that's someone you met, I'm sorry, in an elevator that may come in handy. But like, I wouldn't reduce them. It's just more about increasing your network here and doing it in a bit more targeted way. Like sometimes I get some requests on LinkedIn where it's like, I don't see why we need to connect, because you're literally like, maybe I'm in marketing and you're an engineer, and right now I don't see how what can we talk about, and what is the specific ask, and why you're sending me this invite. So maybe I'm more inclined to not accept that invitation. But if it's someone that says, I have some marketing experience, just wanted to chat, again, informational interviews, sure, I'll let them in, and we'll have a chat and establish that connection.
Perfect, thank you. This does bring us to the end of our webinar here. Mika, do you want to add anything before I move forward?
I think I'm good. Thank you so much.
Oh, I
And I
have one
hope,
more question here.
oh,
Sorry,
okay,
let's
no
do this.
worries.
How do you balance the work experience you put on LinkedIn and reducing your resume to apply for a junior position? So, like, if you've, tailored your resume to kind of, remove your level of seniority, maybe you're trying to apply for a more junior position. How do
Mhm.
you balance it out with your LinkedIn profile?
So I'm guessing if you were more senior, say, before you came here, right?
Right.
Now you're trying to apply for more junior.
Mm-hmm.
I think, well, your executive summary should just list your areas of expertise. And it doesn't matter that, I mean, yeah, yes, you were senior, but areas of expertise and all the keywords should show up in the executive summary. And then on your resume, I think it's okay to show title and the fact that you were senior, but you can always say, I'm open to different opportunities. That can be part of your executive summary as well. But I think it's about the keywords because different levels or not, you know, I guess I mean, it depends on also how junior you think you should go or you can go or you're trying to go. But I don't think it hurts to show the seniority by applying those keywords throughout your resume on LinkedIn and in your executive summary. Because if you can do that at that level, why wouldn't I hire you at a more junior level? But having said that, I know that a lot of people will get turned away because they're quote unquote overqualified, which is, I'm sorry, it's simply just the stupidest excuse that exists here, in my personal opinion. And I know it happens to a lot of people who come here. So maybe then I don't know, Sonia, do you have any other thoughts? Just trying to think. I think for me, it's but keywords, but
No, I think you covered it. And also your LinkedIn profile, like a lot of people mistake it to think that you should be posting your resume on there, and you
right.
really shouldn't. So it should just kind of cover where you worked and
Hmm.
like something that, an accomplishment that you did, maybe something that you're proud of, and you kind of put it there under your experience in under each position on LinkedIn. But I really highly recommend not to post your resume on LinkedIn because
Exactly.
it's always changing, right?
Yep,
Um,
exactly. And you want to give less rather than more because then you can tailor it to
exactly.
that specific job.
Thank you. And how can we? So a lot of people hear that you're too overqualified for the job. Like, how do you tackle that issue?
Well, I'm trying to think.
Well, I can help answer that a
Yeah,
little bit while you're thinking, Mika. I can. So again, your resume. If a job's asking for 5 years of experience, your headline should not say that you have over 10 years of experience, because that right away says you're overqualified. So
right.
the job posting will ask for certain things. You have to make sure that your resume is directly tailored to whatever they're asking for. So if they're asking for 5 years of experience, you're going to show that you have 5 years experience. You're not going to put down that you've been working for 18 years or whatever. You're going to show your top 5 years. You're going to show
Right.
um, obviously your most previous position, and just focus on the last 5 years and what you've done and what you've accomplished in the past. Like, all your focus should be there, and that's just an example of the 5 years. I mean, there could be other things that they're asking for. So let's say if they've asked for um, just a certificate in something or just a bachelor's, and you happen to have a master's, you don't have to put that you have a master's, right? If you really do want that job, because it's kind of intimidating sometimes when people are looking at this resume saying, oh, this person's too overqualified, they're probably not going to stay here too long.
Or they're gonna ask for a lot of money
Exactly.
that this
And
position may not have the budget for. That's true. I agree. And I
yeah.
think to draw on your 5-year example, like I think adding a couple more years is fine, or saying years of experience, which you tone down the number.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you want to meet the minimum requirements, but then really tailoring the keywords, you know, years or not, if you know how to do those specific things, and hopefully you get a job interview, and that's where you can hone in on that and highlight that in your story, saying like, look, I know I have 18 years, but I'm also new here, I'm new to this market, and I'm willing to take whatever to do whatever it takes to get the sort of the Canadian experience here. So I know that this is not at my level, this is a job interview, right? But I'm open to that, and that sort of opens the door for more of a discussion there.
Thank you, Mika. Yeah, we'll take one more last question here. If someone has a gap in their work experience for over 10 years, how could you explain that on your LinkedIn profile or resume?
Hmm. And I
I can
pause
I
because
can help take that as well. So there are a lot of people who end up taking a break from work. Either they've gone back to school or they're taking care of a loved one or children. Anything can happen. In that case, we always advise people to use a functional resume, and you can Google that, because if I start talking about it, that would be a whole other webinar. But it kind of just focuses on your main strengths, your main skills and abilities, rather than a timeline. So, for example, looking at the job ad, let's focus on the three main keywords that they're asking for, right?
Mhm.
Um, let's say they're, I don't know, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but if it is in marketing, maybe it's talking about B2B sales experience and branding or something like that. So you will focus on those three keywords and then categorize your resume according to those keywords and
Yep.
talk about how you have experience in brand management. You have
Right.
experience in B2B sales.
Yep. And I second that. It's really the general resume plus how you tailor it out. But I would keep like a master file of everything you have and you've done
it,
ever.
it's usually just focusing on your experience and ability. Um,
Right.
so take a look at that. Functional resume is the key to employment gaps. So yeah, so we will, I'm going to wrap it up here. Mika, do you want to add anything else?
No, I think I'm good. I hope this was informative. Thank you so much for having me here, and good luck to everybody if you are looking for a job. So yeah.